Star Soft Carter.
All right, and welcome to Clubs or Dubs. I'm Carter,
And I'm not.
and this is your go-to show for deciding what the hottest clubs in the city are and what clubs make you want to go home and play Fortnite with your friends. But actually, this is Carter and Kevin Explain Football. I'm Kevin.
I'm not. I'm having an identity crisis. Uh,
Yes, that's right, audience. I tricked you. That was an opposite day version. I'm Carter.
I'm Kevin.
And see, these are the kind of things you got to know who you can trust in the playoffs. You got to know who you can believe in these playoffs. And after Wild Card Weekend, we know who the teams are we can trust. After after several pretty emphatic victories through Wild Card Weekend, it feels very clear that the top teams are advancing, and the teams that aren't are just going home.
There was only one game this entire weekend that I would consider close. Everything else was not.
I'm not going to deny it was entertaining, but yes, all of these games, in terms of competitiveness, were objectively stinky.
Let's see here. I'm trying to do some math. I think the next closest score was about 14 points.
Yes, I think the Bills game by default is the next closest, which just to get it that close required a missed field goal, a blocked field goal that gave them a short field, and the Bills getting down to, I believe, their fourth string linebacker, who they just called out of retirement in case of an emergency.
Yeah.
Which this weekend was an emergency.
That's right. Anyway.
Still covering the spread, though, baby.
Yep. Let's dive into this wild card weekend, the insanity that happened.
Yes. We have 6 games to cover, so we'll talk about the highs first. Of course, it wouldn't really be Carter and Kevin Explain Football if we didn't talk about the fact that that's Carter and Kevin's boy.
Yeah.
He did it. In CJ Stroud's debut as a playoff-level quarterback, the Houston Texans mollywopped the Cleveland Browns 45-14. CJ Stroud, 16 of 21, 274 yards, 3 touchdowns. Unfortunately for the Cleveland Browns, well, we'll talk. You know what? Let's focus on the winning teams first.
For the highs.
Yeah. Yes, because we have a separate section for all of the eliminated teams.
Yeah. So CJ Stroud, those stats are phenomenal stats. Let alone a playoff game. Like that could be against one of the worst teams in the league. They could have been playing the Panthers and gotten those stats. But that is a phenomenal set of stats.
Right. Against a team that felt like they were arguably surging going into the playoffs, like the vibes had really turned around for the Cleveland Browns since Flacco came in.
Yeah.
It felt like the beginning of this game did feel like it was going to be a shootout. I believe for a brief moment, the Houston Texans were down. I need to double check the exact back and forth, but I believe for just a little bit.
They were down for a solid three-ish minutes. No.
Yes.
No, that's a lie. I did the math wrong. They were down for 18 seconds.
Yeah, so it, like, for a little while, it did look like Flacco was going to do some Flacco magic. The Browns were moving the ball, but Stroud just continued to gunsling. And again, it wasn't just dink and dunk completions. It was a 76-yard bomb. It was a 38-yard bomb. It was a 37-yard bomb. It was what he's been doing all year against arguably the best defense he's faced in terms of just, like, complete composure and confidence to sling it. Yeah. And also, like, the confidence of someone who kind of knows has house money. This was not supposed to be the season the Houston Texans had. Case in point, the pick they traded to the Arizona Cardinals to start this year to get Will Anderson was the Houston pick, which was considered the better pick. The idea was they were going to draft in the top 5, so Arizona was going to have 2 top 5 picks. So now, not only does the Houston Texans get to go to the divisional round, having their first playoff win, I think, since 2019 when they beat the Bills. Basically, the last year where they were good. Also, they have a higher draft pick because their other first-round pick is the Cleveland Browns pick, whom they just kicked the donkey butt out of.
Which is insane. That's hilarious. That's
Yes,
hilarious how that
two.
happened.
Right. And it's not just CJ, because it would be one thing if this team was just all offense and it was just they were like horse racing people. But the defense has really rounded into form. Again, it is like a proof, it is high draft picks coming in. Devin Singletary Jr. has been a lockdown corner this year.
Yeah.
And Will Anderson Jr., a lot of people thought it was a mistake to get back into the first round to get him. But it really is a testament to how, one uber reliable pass rusher completely changes the chemistry of your entire defense. How one leader can absolutely change the entire chemistry of your defense. Someone described him well as like a 15-year veteran in the body of a 22-year-old. Like you watch him, and you're like, oh, this guy's already knows all the tricks. He doesn't there's nothing you're going to trick him with, even as a rookie. And yeah, it was an incredible game. It was also a home game, which is so
Bizarre.
how crazy is that? That not only do they get a playoff game, they get a home game and get to do it in front of the home crowd and advance to the second round.
Advance to the second round. Plus, how they won too. Let's not also sleep on the fact they got back-to-back pick-6 drives.
Yes, truly. And how many is it? That's got to be a first, right? I can't imagine that's happened more than once.
All right, here's the time. Here's the time stat for you. In the third quarter, going into the third quarter, it was 24-14 Houston.
Mm-hmm.
6 minutes and 5 seconds left. 82-yard pick 6. All right, kick ass.
Right. It's like, that might have been the backbreaker.
Yeah, and then 4 minutes and 6 seconds, just shot 1 second aside of 2 minutes later. Christian Harris, 36-yard interception return.
And then you're like, oh, dear. That one I just felt bad because, going into the second half, it's like, I feel like Cleveland's going to come back. They're only down 10. Flacco's just got to throw up a couple stupid, 50-yard passes to get him back into this. Nope.
They said nay.
Right, exactly. The composure it took, because a lot of people were like, this is the upset game if it's going to happen. The composure it takes to effectively be the underdog at home and not only win, but just slam the door shut so hard in the second half is just utterly impressive. They didn't even really need to do that much after those two INTs.
Yeah, and then they still scored in the fourth quarter off a 19-yard run. They just they didn't phone it in. They just put them in the ground.
Right. Yeah. Just immaculate vibes. I would argue out of all the teams, I would argue they might have the most feel good vibes going into the into week 2, just in terms of such an emphatic victory, such such an impressive talent level on offense and defense. I in terms of just regardless of what happens, I feel good about them.
Yeah.
Even if they lose next week, I'm gonna feel great about how this turned out for them.
They've already succeeded so many expectations.
Mm-hmm.
That
yes. Speaking of, sorry.
Yeah,
one more.
I was gonna say that they're already their fans are already stoked. Their office is already stoked. Honestly, as of right now, they just need to get use their draft picks and off-season stuff, get a little bit extra enhancement talent for both sides. Nothing. They don't need any. They're not super lacking in a position with how they've been playing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little extra protection for CJ in the front line, and then They woke up.
Speaking of teams radically exceeding expectations, go Pack go! Holy.
Yes.
The box score looks so much better for this game just because, the garbage time touchdowns. But the Green Bay Packers absolutely shabonk the Dallas Cowboys, the number 2 seed Dallas Cowboys.
Yes.
Coming off their most successful season under Dak Prescott, getting the division from the Eagles. Yes. Dak Prescott having arguably an MVP. He's going to get MVP votes because the voting was already started before this game. 48-32, going into the fourth quarter, which is what really matters because the Packers just pulled their start.
The Packers pulled
Houston
their
kept
starters.
Their guys in. Right. The Texans kept their guys in. Meanwhile, going into like basically the back half of this game, like even going into the second half, it was 27-7.
Yes.
By the end of the by the end of the fourth quarter, the Packers had already scored 40 plus points.
Yes.
Um, and this was an incredibly well-rounded game from their offense. It was 16 of 21 for Jordan Love for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns. Aaron Jones, who's kind of been quiet all year, but by all accounts has been a leader for this team.
Yes.
118 yards, 5 yards a pop, and 3 touchdowns. Against, again, another one of the top defenses in the NFL. This defense was considered feared, and yet they truly just completely trounced them. And I'm even more impressed by the defense. I said that, like, if the Packers were going to lose in the first round, it's because their defense has just been so disappointing this year. But they kept this team in check. Like, Dak Prescott's stats look a lot more glamorous. You know, he ended up getting 400 yards on 60 throws, but like they were up 7-0 for so long. They get a quick interception, turn it around for a touchdown, and almost immediately you go, oh, this is going to be one of those games, huh?
Oh, man.
And then an interception returned for a touchdown later, and it's 27-0, and the game's basically over before it even started.
Yeah. Which, insanity. Like,
Right.
I put this as the biggest upset potential game because theoretically it is. Dallas, like, while their offense could have, like, probably could have kinks that could be worked out, their defense was known as one of the top defenses, and Aaron Jones and Romeo Doubs specifically made them look like fools. Aaron Jones, 21 carries for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns.
It just felt like they weren't prepared schematically. It's like they didn't. It was like, and we'll talk about what happened to the other NFC East team, but this felt like this didn't feel like a lack of talent or a lack of effort. It just felt like they didn't have a plan for anything. Like they just didn't do their homework during the week. So every like play they were seeing inexplicably bewildered them.
Yeah, it's like they went in with the mentality of just like, all right, these guys, like, here's some of their scores from like within the last month before this. They won 9-17 to the Bears. They won 33-30 to the Panthers. They lost to the Giants. Like, sure, these are every other weeks that I'm going back, but it's still like these are some lower tier teams that they're clearly losing to, or like either clearly barely winning or losing to, and it's just like I feel like there had to be a certain level of cockiness on Dallas's aspect.
Right. Yeah, that's the only way to describe getting punched. Like, you know, the Texans winning in such huge fashion is a bit surprising, but at the end of the day, the Cleveland Browns have kind of been a ramshackle, like, stitched together thing most of this year, despite their success on defense. Like, again, this year Dallas has been pretty emphatically dominant outside of, like, one San Francisco 49ers game and one Buffalo Bills game. Like, there seemed to be a level of, like, talent and, like, effort to make sure they didn't get embarrassed. And considering that this Mike McCarthy era, this, like, later Dak Prescott era has been riddled with embarrassment, has been riddled with, like, really cartoonish. How is this worse than the year Dak Prescott did a quarterback draw and then they realized they weren't going to have enough time to get a snap playoff? How is this more embarrassing than the time you had Ezekiel Elliott play center only to get run over? Like, not even like cartoon, like Wile E. Coyote just flattened like a pancake. How?
That will forever live in my memory. That one play. Let me tell you, like
the true Schadenfreude. I don't know how you come up with that in your playbook. I don't know what combination of ideas forms in your head. Ezekiel and Elliott center. But back to the Packers. Right. We can laugh at the Cowboys a little more later.
I'll never stop laughing at that one fucking play. But yeah, no, the Packers showed up, and
yes,
the way I think they're, I don't know if it's the league, but definitely in the playoffs, they are one of the lowest averages of like youngest age, like youngest average age teams.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like that works in their favor because they don't like outside of Aaron Jones, they don't
Right.
really have any like long term like this guy's got it. Like Romeo Dobbs and Luke Musgrave, they're two top receivers for this game, both rookies.
Right. It's the adage of like you don't know what you don't know. It's like you don't know like again, you're playing with house money. You don't like for example, the Bills have the oldest roster and they like you can tell at times this year they were overwhelmed with angst of like if we don't do it this year, this thing is probably coming down around us. Whereas like Jordan Love, people were already dismissing him. So
Yeah,
what does he have to lose?
yeah.
I just was so impressed with him this game.
He
You
looked
see
phenomenal.
why the Packers talked themselves into drafting him because you're like, yes, he has all of the traits your last two generational quarterbacks had in terms of just like ability to make silly arm angles, the ability to heave it downfield, and the ability to just like basically change the geometry of the field because you can basically hit someone from anywhere.
hmm And then I was also watching the Tom. So Tom Grassi, you know who he is?
Kind of.
He's a very big NFL like YouTuber. He live reacts to all the Packers games. Huge Packers fan.
Huh.
Over the summer he did the 30 for 30 where he went to all 30 NFL stadiums in 30 days. Like he was that guy. He did it for charity.
Oh yeah.
Did it for charity. Does a lot of shorts and skits and stuff. And he was watching the Packers game, like doing a live recording of it. Um, and he was watching it with his dad, who's a diehard Cowboys fan. And the dude was going nuts. He was living his best life. And that's something like you really like to see from like cuz they like he said it best. They were just happy to make it to the playoffs with this young team and no Aaron Rodgers, no Brett Favre, like nothing like that. They were just happy to make it to the playoffs and to do the performance they did where they started pulling starters in the middle of the game. Phenomenal.
Right, especially coming from where they were the last couple of years with Aaron Rodgers, where they were in a very similar position to the Cowboys, where it's like, okay, how many times are you going to have 12 wins just to poop your pants in the playoffs? Like,
Yeah.
how many times are we going to do this song and dance where this is supposed to be your year and it just doesn't happen? Whereas it's like, no, this team is going to go out there and make it happen. And look, I know they have a really tough matchup next. I'm not going to like much like the Chiefs for the last couple of years. I'm not going to talk myself into them, the 49ers losing until it happens.
Yeah.
But,
It's not
again,
it's not going to be an
house
easy
money.
one. Yeah.
Right.
It's not going to be an easy game, but and they're playing one of the I would say one of the most stacked talent-wise offenses.
Mhm.
That being said, they upsetted the Cowboys, so
Right. That being said, the
they're
vibes.
riding high with this like the definition of a wild card. Cuz going into last week, like before the game, San Fran was most likely all their coaches were prepping for Dallas
Mhm.
because they were like this team that barely made it, no chance. Like the writing was kind of on the wall, and they didn't just like they didn't compete with Dallas. They humiliated them.
Right.
That's when during that game, that's when they start wiping off the whiteboard and starting over. I feel like
Right.
I feel like they don't have a significant amount of prep time more because also there's the factor of if the like if the 40 with the 49ers their opponent for this upcoming week was purely determined by how this goes. On the inverse, the Packers, they knew if they beat the Cowboys, they were exclusively going to play the 49ers. So they had a lot more time to focus on one opponent too.
Huh. I didn't think about it that way.
Cuz yeah, like let's say let's say you have an hour to plan for a future team.
Mhm.
You dedicate and like Packers could dedicate like 50% for the Dallas game and then they know they're going to play 49ers because they had the bye, so they didn't have the chance of losing. So they could dedicate their other 50% of time to determining that. Meanwhile, the 49ers, they had theoretically all but, I think, three teams that they could have played, or two other teams, yeah. The only teams that they didn't really need to prepare for this upcoming week is Dallas and Detroit because there's so many other teams below them that they would have played them. So they had to prepare for four teams and not two. So that's a lot more division of time.
Right, right. That is an interesting point. I guess, like, I don't know how much, like, it's a 7-day tournament. You have to at least have some kind of contingency plan for every possible matchup,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Because it's like, otherwise, you're only turning around in a week for a make or break game.
yeah, but yeah, that's true. But also, like my argument's still like they couldn't like they had to divide their resources, whether it be
Right, right.
times, coaches, whatever, to focus on four potential matchups.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I'm curious. I've never really thought about that kind of more lateral thinking to it of like, well, we have to be prepared for everyone. We can't just wait to find out who it is.
Yeah, because I understand if they're using this week to rest their players, fine.
Mhm.
But having the bye during playoffs, I feel like is not a bye week for the coaches. That is a putting putting your brains to the test, minimum.
Right. Yes. Shall we move on to my team?
Yes. First off,
Well,
big fan of the snow game.
yes. So this was a chaotic week in Buffalo, New York. Lake effect snow hit once again, and I cannot stress enough to people like who are like, "Oh, soft, soft." It's like you have to understand a blizzard is not just a lot of snow. It is a hurricane that has occurred in a winter climate. There is lightning, there is wind, there is an eye of the storm. It is basically a hurricane.
Hmm.
Uh, and it literally was we cannot get ambulances to and from the stadium, so by law we cannot have a game on this specific day. I also just I hate to start off being crabby, but I just love that people are like, well, then don't put it by the lake, move the team. And I'm like,
That's
I
not
am
the
not
point.
watching. Yeah, not the point. And also, I am not watching that weasel Terry Pagula and that snake in the grass governor steal money from the city of Buffalo and the greater New York area just to have the Buffalo Bills play in Utica. Fuck you. But anyway, yes. So,
What
I
a
mean,
great
it's
hill
also
to die on, and I support it fully.
just like fuck off. I'm not having my friends go to fucking Utica, the sad state of Central New York, to go see this team play. Josh Allen is not playing near Hamilton College. Go fuck yourself. But anyway, so yeah, and it's also a little embarrassing that Terry didn't shell out for shovelers, so it became a fan thing,
Yeah.
which like is simultaneously embarrassing, but it is good for morale. It does
It.
underline like these fans are fucking maniacs
Yeah. I.
because they're like shirtless in dangerous
Oh
weather.
yeah. They're shirtless. They're going down slides. They're having a blast, and like obviously like it's a very cheap strategy, but part of me like if you offer to pay them exclusively in like warm coffee and cocoa and a ticket to the game, you'd have a Justice Book Stadium, and that's honestly a mentality I really like. I wasn't
Right,
don't like the cheapness aspect of not
right. I mean, they still paid
they
them.
still
It is
paid
more
them,
just like, come on, we're a professional outlet here.
yeah,
Let's
but like think about this. You designate like an entire section to these fans, like in decent seats for shoveling out your stadium and all that jazz, and that's gonna be your die-hard fans.
Oh yeah,
Like I said to my wife, I was like, if it's like single digit degrees or colder, like it was for this game, what like it was for the Chiefs game, and
Mhm.
they're offering me drinks and ticket to to like shovel out. I'll go out there full force and enjoy every second of it.
Right. Yeah, and it was kind of a big deal because if they didn't clear those seats, they weren't going to get cleared to use them. We would have had to like seal off parts of the stadium. So a lot of the seats still had snow, but the aisles were clear. The field itself was clear. Like the snow had fortunately stopped by then, outside of like flurries. And the result was anytime a big Bills play happened, people would just start throwing snow into the air. At one point, someone tried to throw a snowball at the ball to keep Pickens from catching a ball, which was very funny. And it's reminiscent of last year where they just stopped the game against the Dolphins for a little bit
Yeah,
and
to
warned
yell at
fans that
everyone.
if they didn't stop throwing snowballs on the field, they were going to get penalized, which I have to assume is a made-up rule. You can't. There's no way someone thought to put that in the actual rule book. But yeah, again, snow football, immaculate vibes. But also, it's like the exact kind of game you wanted to see from the Bills because it was the polar opposite of that opening weekend disaster against the Jets, where like
Yeah.
at some point someone needed to grab as many teammates as they could and say, guys, the only way we are losing this game is if we actively fuck it up. Like, we just need to march downfield, score 20 to 30 points, and it'll be over. And that is literally this game to a T, where it's like, you know, we're not throwing it much past 20 yards. Every time someone's about to get tackled, they wrap both hands on the ball. Like, we methodically marched to a 21-0 lead. Josh Allen had a little yabba dabba doo moment where he got like stutter steps and then just ran through a man for the second longest touchdown run in playoff history. Like, I'm antsy because there were a lot of injuries. The Steelers briefly had a window of light when we were down to our fifth string linebacker, and
Yeah.
they were kind of just carving up the inside of our defense. But then, we make up for that because it's like, oh, Josh Allen is locked in. Like, this is like that 13 seconds Josh Allen where it's like, oh, he's locked in.
Yeah.
He's like
The
completely
gears are
like,
turning.
yeah. He finally got his Adderall prescription back, so he's like actually focused. Like his brain isn't in 12 different places. 4 touchdowns. Like it wasn't as sexy as that Patriots game where we literally scored every drive, but it was a way more mature game because like the Steelers really were getting close to making this a classic Steelers rock fight game. Like the momentum swung for a minute where they blocked a field goal. Our punter pulls his hamstring and they managed to finally score a touchdown. And then like by the end of the third quarter, I just go, Jesus, how is this happening? And I realized we had only had the ball once.
Mm-hmm.
Like we punted once and they went on like a 7-minute drive and I'm like, oh god, this is all the makings of a how the hell did the Steelers win this? But no, we just calmed down, marched the ball downfield. Khalil Shakir somehow managed to like do a Spider-Man move to score a touchdown. And yeah, everything worked out. I'm a little antsy and we'll talk about it as we go on to next week, but like for now, this is the exact kind of game you wanted to see in terms of like, oh, this is how the Bills get through this time. Actually being able to run the ball, having enough, like, a defense that isn't completely getting pushed around. And again, Josh Allen just being like, we have the best individual player on the field at any given time during these playoffs. And that usually can be enough to pull it off. Another highlight, this is a note you had.
Yep. 3 out of 8 teams that are remaining have never won a Super Bowl, and I feel like that's fun.
Oh, yes, we are referring to the Buffalo Bills, the Detroit Lions, who had an incredible game, which we will probably talk about a little bit as we talk about the Rams, too.
Yeah.
And the Houston Texans.
Yeah, no, it's... I like a good story of a team that's never won making a solid surge, and all 3 of these teams have clearly made cases for themselves that they're playoff caliber teams minimum, like obviously by them making it, but they all have potential to win the conference, and I'm excited to see how this goes. Yeah. So here's the interesting part with the don't sleep on game, because there's not really a game you couldn't have passed up because it was one per time slot.
Right.
And
there's 4 games.
yeah.
Or you mean
Yeah,
the
for
wild
this
card
last
weekend?
week wild card. There were 6 games, and it's just like they were all except for one blowouts.
Right. So do you just pick Detroit, Los Angeles by default?
I mean I was gonna lean into Packers Cowboys because that was so much fun to watch. Look, honestly, if you have time on your hands, see if you can find that Tom Grossi VOD like while you're like to listen to while working out. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just, and we'll again, we're going to talk about each team that got eliminated,
Yeah.
but like it's insane how bad the vibes for the Cowboys were
Oh,
immediately. Like literally in the second drive they had, they like even the commentators pointed out, it's like, why is CD Lamb so angry right now? What the hell is with him right now?
yeah.
Like he was like clearly pissed at Dak about something. I'm like, there was an insane rumor last year about the Bills when they were losing to the Bengals that Josh Allen's girlfriend trashed their shared apartment and he had to sleep like at someone else's house, and that's why they were struggling, and that's why Diggs was mad at him. And I'm like, did something like that happen with the Cowboys? Because that's the only reason I can understand to get so tilted when the score going into the second quarter was still 7-0. It's like, well, that's not optimal, but you know, that's not an insurmountable lead.
Yeah.
I kind of want to say, in terms of like, don't sleep on games, the Kansas City Miami game. One, because it was historically cold.
Yes.
Like
Top
it was a
5.
surprisingly packed stadium.
Yeah.
Yeah. Andy Reid looked revolting because he just had his mustache froze.
He looked
For the
awesome.
Chiefs,
I loved that.
just looked unhinged. For the Chiefs, it was just like, okay, there's a baseline level competency here on display that is appreciated after a very angsty back
Yeah.
half of the year. And for the Dolphins, and we'll talk about them, it is kind of a don't sleep on game because I'm like,
They didn't look
okay, the
bad.
vibes are gone.
Yeah.
I don't know. It feels like the vibes are kind of gone, and I'm just like, where do you go from here with
I
this team? How you've built it?
I feel like if it was a warmer game, it would have been different, but it wasn't. The
And that's
Chiefs.
why you couldn't afford to let the Bills win the division.
Yeah.
Um, well,
Yeah.
on those notes, should we? Oh, sorry, what were you going to
I
say?
was gonna say no. They gotta like the Dolphins have to end on a warm part of the season, like with them, not other people.
Yeah.
All right.
But yes, while we're talking about losers, do we want to just quickly go through all the eliminated teams?
Sure. And I put down 1 point, and you filled in the ones that I didn't. Um, where it's just like here's what I think of just like biggest biggest flaw, biggest mistake
Yeah.
that
Biggest
happened.
mistake, kind of like the story of this team going into the offseason.
Yeah. So I did it in game order. So that's the
Thank
order it
you.
is. So
Mhm.
first eliminated team, Cleveland Browns. Flacco's 2 picks.
Yes, the pumpkin or the carriage finally turned back into a pumpkin for our friend Joe Flacco.
Yes.
Kind of disappointing to see. If only, like, look again. I don't want the Browns to get rewarded, but the silliness of Joe Flacco of all people leading a team to the
Yeah.
conference finals would have been very funny.
Oh yeah.
But we shall have to, we shall have to wait to see Joe Flacco ascend again. Um, it is very interesting. The Browns have already reacted to this game. They have fired their offensive coordinator and
Yes,
the
they did.
running backs coach, which is
Hmm.
kind of inexplicable considering those two got handed an absolute crap sandwich this year.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's like with how many. First off, how many injuries at quarterback? There's Joe Flacco's starting quarterback number 5 for them this season.
uh, four, I think.
4 or
I don't
5.
think they made it to five. Maybe someone like took snaps
No,
for
because
five, but like,
somebody started last week. Somebody or week 18, they had a different starter. They had Jeff Driscoll start.
oh yeah, so it is five. Fuck.
Yeah, they had
Yeah,
it.
no, you're right. Um, yeah, no, it like again, they got held a crap sandwich. Literally,
Best running back
they
blew up his
yeah,
leg very early on.
yes, isosceles triangle week two. So basically, the offense you thought was going to be the Cleveland Browns offense was not the offense that was the Cleveland Browns offense. On top of the fact that I have to imagine that poor offensive coordinator was spiraling every week, like, oh my god, they spent so many resources to get Deshaun Watson here, and he can't even play quarterback right.
Yeah.
Like, truly, like, it's kind of a miracle the offense was this competent in the back half of the year.
Oh,
And why are they
absolutely.
the ones get left held in the bag? I guess the only solace for them, outside of the fact that they're still paying the Houston Texans money, truly a level of cucking that would make William Shakespeare giggle as he writes his next romantic comedy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess if there's any silver lining, it's like Joe Flacco kind of running out of steam at the end of the year. You can't talk yourself into starting him over Deshaun Watson. So
Yeah.
it's
You.
like, well, we can commit to the sunk cost fallacy still.
Yeah, and it's just like this is like also a prime example of just how they've like they've done so good, and I feel like it was a very defensive heavy team, like with like Miles
Mm,
Garrett and stuff. But it's just like you clearly wasted a lot of your stuff
right.
to
It's
for
like the defense
Deshaun
isn't getting any
Watson, and I don't think he's completed an entire season on your team yet.
not even close. Yeah, it's like it is a shame because again, there's so many guys I love on this team. Like again, Nick Chubb, awesome guy, great leader.
Mm-hmm.
Njoku is finally having his day in the sun. He's as a tight end, he's been this guy for so long who people have been like, no, no, trust me. He's got all the physical tools, it will work out. Guy gets his damn near gets his face burnt off this year, recovers, keeps playing, and kind of finally emerges as a go-to tight end in the league. Amari
Mm-hmm.
Cooper, who's kind of like gotten the short end of the stick, and then all these guys I love on the defense: Miles Garrett, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's kind of like one of my favorite players, Greg Newsome the second, like all these awesome defensive players, and I feel so bad all of it gets stuck because it's like your franchise made the worst possible decision a franchise could make.
Yeah.
Um, On to Miami. Uh, Keeping your naming convention, too much money for Tua. So I Miami's a weird place now because the highs of the early season fell apart the minute it got cold. And you're right, they do have to play in a warm weather climate in the playoffs, but it's like, what are the odds of that happening? Because it's like, who are going to be the teams that are in the head of the, like, it feels like Baltimore will still be a top team for a while. Buffalo has to reconfigure a couple things, especially on defense, but like, Josh Allen is getting dangerously close to I own you territory with this team. He's only lost to them twice
Mm-hmm.
in his career. Kansas City will still be around. Like, I guess Indianapolis and Jacksonville will be around. Houston, but like you're basically flipping a coin if you get to play in a warm weather city or not. And on top of that, it's like you really do see the limitations of this team when it's like Raheem Mostert had his healthiest year and he kind of limped into
Yeah.
the final weeks. Devon Achane wasn't able to stay healthy the whole year. He very much feels like a glass cannon. Tyreek Hill, yes, he's still an elite talent, but like you just have to accept at this age, he's not going to be able to play every single game.
Yeah.
He's going to be limping a lot. Jalen Waddle's been hurt a bunch of times,
Yeah.
and on top of
Waddle's
that,
been injury roulette this entire season.
yeah, and all of it is centered around Tua Tagovailoa, who just and like I feel so bad because none of this is really his fault.
No.
Again, he didn't like again he had maybe the most catastrophic injury you could have in college. He fractured his hip, like to the point where like the combine was this highly like televised thing of like, is he going to pass his physical, or the doctor's even going to clear him to play football again?
Yeah.
And then he has, on top of that, he basically gets treated like a pawn of war and gets some of the worst concussions we've ever seen. And he just he just doesn't seem like the guy who can lead this offense. Like it's such a bummer to see the fans turn on him like this because it's like I don't know. Yes, he's limited, but he didn't draft himself.
Yeah. No. It's not on Tua,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just like it's. It, I don't want to say they wasted too much money on him because that's not true.
Well, I guess it is like they're
I
going
don't
to
know.
have to because
Yeah.
it's like unless you can guarantee, like you're kind of stuck with you kind of have to lock into him unless you can absolutely positively, without a doubt, guarantee you're going a tier above him. Like if you can go from Zach Wilson to Aaron Rodgers, even though that didn't work out this year, or even Jared Goff to Matthew Stafford, like that's justifiable. That's worth selling the farm for. But how often does that happen? More often than not, you're going from Andy Dalton to like Derek Carr, and I'm like, what quarterback could theoretically be available to even justify that? Not Ryan Tannehill, maybe Geno Smith. Like, is that enough?
Yeah.
I did like maybe roll the dice on Trey Lance. Like, there's just not a lot of options to like really get you over the hump. And you kind of just have to be like, well, we're gonna make it work with Tua, or we're gonna blow this thing up and try again.
Yeah. All right. Next team is the Dallas Cowboys. We've talked about how they've failed spectacularly, and also rumors make it seem like they're going to keep their head coach.
Yes, Adam Schefter's reporting that they are going to stick with Mike McCarthy, which is so funny it just really felt untenable, right? Like you're like, you can't bring him back after this game.
It's
More
yeah.
successful coaches have gotten fired for a lot less.
It's one thing to do like to be bad and fired in the middle of the season because the team is just bad. But it's another thing to do like make it into the playoffs pretty consistently and then
Again,
not make it far.
right? It is right because it's like
It makes
this
it
is how many times now? How many times? Three straight where this something like
yeah,
this has
3 or 4
happened,
straight or two like I think 3 since like 2019. Like
right? And it's like we said, the main thing is to not get embarrassed, and it's happened three times. And someone
yeah.
described him as pre-fired, where it really does feel like Jerry Jones couldn't find anyone he really liked, so he's just going to sit for another year and let this play out. And
Yeah.
again, I do think we underrate this motherfucker. Kept Jason Garrett for 10 years.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to stick with a middling coach as long as they don't interfere with his grand vision of things. You want to know an
Yeah.
insane stat?
Sure.
Let me hit you with this.
Hit me.
Since the year 2000, um, the Dallas Cowboys compared to the New York Jets. Keep in mind that the New York Jets have not made the playoffs since the year 2010. Playoff wins for the New York Jets, 6. Conference championship appearances, 2. Do you want to guess how many the Dallas Cowboys have?
One conference and like 12 appearances.
They have 4 playoff wins to the New York Jets 6 and 0 conference championship appearances. Hell, I think in that time, like 1, 2, at least three, like 3 for the Eagles where they won the conference championship game,
Yeah.
and then at least 2 or 3 more where they lost. Because I remember they played the Cardinals one time, and I know there was at least one other time with Donovan McNabb.
Yeah.
Again, it's like again at some point that has to get in because people really thought this would be the make or break year because like he finally made peace with the old Dallas coach. It seemed like he'd finally learned his lesson about like maybe it is good to have a type A head coach, a guy who wants to run things.
Yeah.
Nope, he did not learn that lesson evidently.
No, and it's like I'm trying to just open up a private browser so I don't get spammed with Dallas Cowboy content. Um
But yeah, so evidently, congratulations, Bill Belichick. I guess you're going to Atlanta, probably.
Probably Atlanta, but like they haven't. So we're still in that point of time in our lives, and mostly in our lives, but also the fact of the what's it called? The rookie class. These young, like the youngest kids in the league, are being born in a time where they've never known the Dallas Cowboys to make a Super Bowl appearance.
Right.
And for how, like, sure, that's happened for other teams. Like, technically, the Texans have never won. Technically, the Bills have never won. But these teams get shit on about it constantly.
Uh-huh.
And Dallas is like, they're always hyping up Dallas. Just like the 49ers. They always hype up Dallas. They always hype up the 49ers. And it's just like, yeah, like, this is great. And it's just like, dude, you
Right.
gotta understand.
Right. Like, this is not a prestige brand anymore. This is a
Yeah.
prestige brand in the sense that Warner Brothers is a prestige brand, where it's like, well, it's a name, and it's like,
Yeah, same.
okay, but your company's in the pit right now. Barbie was an accident.
Yeah, same with
What is Barbie?
yeah,
I guess that's what's his name? Oh my god, the linebacker. Micah Parsons. Barbie is Micah Parsons. An accident.
yeah. But
You want to know an insane like football player thing in terms of ages that almost made me jump off a bridge in Minecraft?
sure.
So Tre'Davious White, who was like the first big draft pick of Brandon Bean and Sean handed to him McDermott, we're the same age. He was born the same year as me. He just had his birthday. He's only like
Yikes.
5 months older than me. How bleak is that? This guy who is literally like the foundational piece of this era of Buffalo Bills football, who's like, he tore his Achilles this year, and they're like, God, he's aged so much. I don't know if he'll be able to recover still. He's not even 30 yet.
Yeah. No, it's insane.
Bleak,
You
bleak for me.
you age so fast in football. All right. Speaking of aging fast in football, the LA Rams with old man Stafford.
Yes. See, a part of as happy as I was that we got this matchup, I kind of wish it happened in the second round because I'm like, are the Rams not one of like the 4 or 5 best teams left? Because I'm looking at these teams and I'm like, I feel like this Rams team could beat Kansas City. I feel like they could beat
Yeah.
Houston. I feel like they could beat Buffalo. It'd be tough, but they could.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I think they did beat Green Bay at some point.
Let me check that.
I'm like, and they definitely could beat Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Like, I think they could beat most of these teams, honestly. Hell, they almost beat the Ravens.
Yeah.
But because they have to go against they have to go against the Lions this week, they lost. Is this not the first home win for the Lions in playoff history?
In the last like 900 years of their existence, I don't remember.
32 years.
Yeah, it's their first
But
win
yeah,
in 32 years. I don't remember 32 years ago. That's like
yes.
it was -5 or something like that.
Yeah, and it's the shame is they didn't even play bad. Like
No.
they were like, you know what? I will die on the hill of Matthew Stafford. When it comes to gunslingers, when it comes to old rune tune like cowpokes with big irons on their hip, there might be cowpokes who are better, doing the square dance. There might be ones better at doing the lasso, but there ain't no better gunslinger. Just pure and simple, slinging it around the yard.
Mm-hmm.
Truly, some of those plays, I'm just like, I don't know how you get your arm to do that. Puka Nacua just had the game of his life, 9 catches for 181 yards and a touchdown. He should have had more. Like, he got mollywopped on 1 or 2 throws.
Yeah.
Really, one of the 2 big differences in this game is Detroit seemed to catch on pretty quickly that the refs were going to keep, their whistle in their mouth. Which, on one hand, I hate, only on the grounds of, like, we should not have different rules in the playoffs.
No.
Like, we should keep it consistent because otherwise that's an unfair advantage. But at the same time, like, look, the Lions just got screwed by the refs on their home field. Like, you had to understand this was a possibility, that the referees were going to be like, I'm not going to be the one responsible for this. Even if it means Matthew Stafford gets hit by 3 people at the exact same time and gets stepped on, and so clearly has a concussion that I cannot believe he was allowed to come back on the field. It's actually kind of crazy what he did. So you see, like, there's a close-up shot where his eyes are, like, in the back of his head.
Yeah.
And he gets up and, kind of realizing someone's going to notice that, starts grabbing his shoulder to make it look like it was an arm injury, to basically distract from the fact. Truly insane stuff. And, like, on one hand, I'm like, this is horribly irresponsible, get off the field. But on the other hand, yeah, this is kind of just stuff he does. And at the end of the day, the difference in this game really ended up being the Rams could not score in the red zone. They just had to settle for field goals. It was like 4th and like 7, around midfield. And the Rams probably should have went for it with 4 minutes left, go get the lead, force Jared Goff to make a comeback. And Sean McVay made the choice to say, I'm going to punt it. I believe we will get the ball back. Even though my defense has not been great this game, I believe we can I believe I can stop Jared Goff for one drive. And unfortunately, they weren't able to. They marched the ball downfield, were able to take a knee, and the Lions got their win. And that's, as much as I like the Rams and would have liked to see them go further, I am really happy to see Jared Goff do that because, he did get left holding the bag for a lot of Sean McVay's failures.
Yeah.
Like, he got left holding the bag for that Super Bowl loss. And it's nice to see him get a playoff win and kind of not get all of the monkeys off his back, but at least get some of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's...
And that's...
I don't think this was as much of a loss for the the Rams as it was a win for Detroit, because I feel like the Rams still looked like they were firing well. Like, they were firing on all cylinders, and...
Right. They could have easily won this game.
Yeah.
It really is just any given Sunday, a bounce won't go your way. And for them, it is just, like, they got to make the decision of, like, do we continue, like, a slightly slower rebuild, or do we look and realize Stafford probably has 1 or 2 years left like this, and we have a lot of great young guys. Let's just go for broke again. Fuck them picks. Like, rebuild a star defense.
Team.
Yeah. Just get as many star defensive players as we can and just go for it one more time.
I feel like that's
And
gonna
it's
depend
hard,
on their schedule release.
right? And I'm like, honestly, it's hard to talk me out of that as a strategy.
Yeah, you get
Because if you see what Matthew Stafford can do on that field, you can talk yourself into a lot of ridiculous things.
yeah. If you find yourself in a situation like, because you're already in a pretty tough division, can't deny that,
Mm.
and I don't think there's going to be enough big changes for this season after the season in that division to really warrant it being more or less tough. Um, but you got a tough division, and you have like if you end up playing some other divisions like the Souths and
Right,
stuff,
right.
you can get away with just sabotaging to get a winning schedule at least. Um, and then, but if you get against the East, it's like, all right, just save your picks, save your money. Like
Right,
if they
right.
get both East divisions, it's just
Mhm.
like those are other tough teams outside of the West,
Right.
and it's just
Um,
yeah,
Pittsburgh. Well, all right. Um, yeah, I kind of knew I didn't have too much to worry about when Mason Rudolph just like on their second drive just sailed the ball over someone's head. And I'm like, oh, they're not going to figure this out. And I guess it's good that you're like, okay, we cannot talk ourselves into Mason Rudolph for another year. But
mm-hmm.
it really is like, what do you do? Do you draft another quarterback? Like the line still needs work. The defense is pretty good, I suppose. Like
Yeah,
I think it's really telling that Mike Tomlin was like kind of prickly about his contract discussion because like if you were to tell me he would step away this year realizing that the team is kind of stuck where it is, I wouldn't blame him.
yeah. This is a Pittsburgh ending to a Pittsburgh season where they
Right.
ride into the middle of the pack most of the season, show some very good stretches of talent, some very bad stretches of talent, and just be like, oh, we can be playoff bound conditionally.
Mhm.
Like what was it? If the Jaguars won, Houston wouldn't have gotten the division, so they would have been like the 7 seed or something like that, and then
Mhm.
Bills winning would have put Pittsburgh out.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's as incredible and as impressive as that Mike Tomlin never having a losing record thing. It's like, yeah, but if this is your ceiling,
Yeah,
do you not want more in life?
yeah, no,
Do you not want more?
it's very, it's, it's what like, it's one of those things that it's like, I'm, it's like I don't want to say it's a retirement team, but it's, it's like rooting. I guess it's like a retirement team to root for, where it's like being like kind of in like in the world of jobs. This is a weird ass analogy, but it's like I'm watching
I'll
like
follow you.
I'm all over the place with the games. I'm watching them like as an Eagles fan and stuff, and then it's just like after I lose some of my gusto about it, it's just like, you know what? I want a team that like this is implying I would change teams, but no, that's not going to happen. But it's like
Are you sure after this week?
I'm still sure. I'm gonna be less happy with the team I chose, but I'm still sure. I finished that game, unfortunately. Um, but after that, it's just like you. It's just like, you know what? Time to ease back. Time to take a second and redo things, and just like watch this, and it's like become a Steelers fan, and like, will they ever win the Super Bowl at the rate they're going? No. Am I gonna see the majority of wins? Yes. Maybe a playoff appearance or two if I'm feeling spicy that year. Yes. It's like you're settling into a routine, like a 9 to 5 routine. Oh, I should have called it a
Right.
9 and 5 routine. Damn it, that was a perfect opportunity. Um,
You can still patent it later.
yeah, whatever. But that's what it feels like. It's like you're set. It's a team that's just like, we're gonna settle.
Mm.
We're not gonna disappoint the
Um,
fans majorly, but you guys are gonna. We're not gonna do anything great for them.
Speaking of which, on the other end of the spectrum,
Yes.
disappointing the fans in a cartoonish degree where, like, you know what? I will say this about Eagles fans. they do call it as they see it. People were picking up the stink from this team
Yes.
for weeks. And yeah, the shitstorm ends.
Yes.
Do you really do you want to actually talk about the actual game
A
itself, or
little
do you
bit.
want me to? Okay,
I'll
I'll
talk about
let
the
you
game
just
a
have
little
the
bit.
floor, and
All
then
right.
I'm gonna pitch you just a couple questions as like our resident Eagles fan.
So first off, mediocre ending to a mediocre game of stretch of games. That was just like the Eagles had no right in being that game with how they played the last couple of games and with how
Hmm.
they already clinched the spot and then went on a losing streak. It's just like, you know what? This is rightfully deserved. It was a mess. The team was clearly falling apart,
Yes.
and fans were rightfully mad about it, in my opinion. Like, you started off, like, they kept announcing the same stats, and it was driving me insane. They started off 10-1, and then they lost 5 of the last 6 games. Like, we get it. You don't need to say it during every timeout, every pause, every break, everything. We get it. It was driving me insane. But it was just things were clearly falling apart, and people like there was only a handful of players that were looking good in that game, and it was, in my opinion, the offensive line. Like, they weren't perfect, but the offensive line still had held pretty strong. The defensive line held, they were all right. They were like B level. Um, like, they weren't perfect, but they tried their best, and it was clear that they were trying compared to a lot of other positions. Devontae Smith, DeAndre Swift, and Jake Elliott. Those are the
Hmm.
guys that were like out there doing their jobs, and everyone else kind of phoned it in.
Yeah, it is. I'll just interject here and say, like, it is actually shocking how already done this team looked. As
I
someone
know.
pointed out, literally the day of the game, they dropped the excuse article, or the all right, who's getting thrown under the bus article, where they're
Yeah.
talking about the team being out of sync and Sirianni not being able to rally the
Yeah.
troops. It's like you always wait till after the big loss. The guy who did that piece on Sean, how about them Plains McDermott, at least had the courtesy to wait till after the Eagles game where it looked like the season was done. So
Yeah.
no, they dropped it. It's really telling that they dropped
It
it
was.
before the game, because there was just
Yeah.
a sense of yeah, this isn't happening. Like
No, it was
the utter
sad.
disgust, yeah,
It
the utter
was.
disgust among the NFL intelligentsia being like, how do you not know how to pick up a blitz? How is the tackling
Oh
this
my
bad?
god.
How is the form and the
I'm
preparation this bad?
I'm watching people run into James Bradbury, and I think there was like 6 targets on the guy that he was covering, and 5 of them were made into highly successful plays. And the one play that was like clearly stuck out was this dude. I don't know who it was, but he ran into Bradbury, and he just bounced off of him. And what did he decide to do? He ran it back for like a 40, like a freaking decently large touchdown. Let me see if I can find the exact one. It was Trey Palmer for a 56-yard pass, I believe. And he just bounced off James Bradbury, and Bradbury covered himself in fucking butterfingers and butter. And dude just went, ah. And that was it. And it was clear that the rest of the D backs, like, he bounced off of Kevin Byard too, which was supposed to be a great acquisition this season. And the rest of the D backs were just kind of like, they phoned it in to try and attempt to get him.
Mm.
Like, honestly,
Yeah, it's
I hate the like constant like, this is like a phony alert, but it was like, yeah, we would have deserved it after that game. We would have deserved one of the phony alerts.
yeah. I like. All right. Well, you know what? There's obviously a lot we can say about this. I do think it's a top-down organizational failure. Howie's refusal to really address the center of the defense, the inability to the inability by the coaches to adapt and get the offense moving again, because so much of this last year was built on the offense getting good leads and controlling the game. Like just basic preparation, bad luck with injuries. Like clearly Hurts was hurt this whole year. And I don't put this on him, because at the end of the day, if your offensive coordinator cannot come up with a play to avoid the blitz or slow down the blitz, that's a strategy thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no amount of talent that can overcome that. I'll just pitch to you, or go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, a blitz is one of those very basic plays. Like, everybody runs them. It's not a secret. It's not like there's not like some sort of like black magic you have to do to try and get it to be successful. It just it happens. It's like a freaking layup.
Here's my question for you. Are you okay with Sirianni coming back?
I personally am. I my stance on him is I think he put a little too much reliance on his coordinators. I'm not giving him the leniency I would have given him at the start of this season going into the next one. Dude's got half a season to make his job, keep his job, in my opinion.
This could very much be a dead man walking situation if the year starts off bad.
Yeah. If the year starts off bad, if the next season starts off bad, I would have no problem fighting him. But I feel like he's done good enough, and he's got enough gusto and morale boosting in him to, in my opinion, earn a second chance about it.
Yes.
Say what you will about the performance this year. The team typically is a very big fans of him, and sometimes you need the coach to be the morale guy. That being said, I give the Eagles 2 weeks to fire both of their coordinators, or all three of their coordinators, if you want to, with whatever the hell Matt Patricia actually is to that team.
Yeah, I guess for me it is I guess for me a lot of it is the angst of if you're not calling the plays and you're not calling the defense and the people you pick to run those things are bad, and also in terms of just being a leader, you're not coming up with anything to stop this skid. Truly, just when this happened to the Steelers, the answer was very obvious what went wrong. It's Ben Roethlisberger can't drop back to pass. He has to throw. If he doesn't throw the ball in 0.2 seconds because he's old and slow, it's not going to work. You don't have that excuse. You have lots of talent on this team.
Yeah.
I guess my question is well, what do you do here, Nick? And again, it feels callous. He has one of the best winning percentages an Eagles coach has ever had, but it's this league is very
humiliation thing again.
Right. It is there's too much talent on this team for things like this to happen. And I could be talked into letting him stay, especially if you can't find, because it's unless you're getting Ben Johnson and so much of it is if you can't find an adequate replacement, don't waste resources getting a replacement. Yeah. Then you're just multiplying one bad decision with another bad decision.
Yeah, no.
So
firing Sirianni to pick up someone as a head coach that's not going to work out even more is ridiculous.
Right. Unless you can get Belichick, who obviously you would need to get him a better offensive coordinator, but
Jeff
this defense would not this defense would not look like that. Oh, well, that's say what you want, but the defense would have looked a lot better. The Patriots were hurt to shit this year, and their defense was still pretty top tier. Or if you can get Ben Johnson and just be here's a box of toys, go win a Super Bowl. Come up with the craziest offense you can think of, and we're just going to score 50 every game. But if you can't do that, then I just don't think there's a good enough reason to fire Sirianni. Just wait till the next round of available coaches.
That's another thing, too. He became, maybe not him specifically, but the Eagles' offense became incredibly predictable, to an unfunny degree. And it's just come on, man. We gotta make something up here. We gotta try something different.
Hell, if you could talk Eric Bieniemy out of leaving Washington, if nothing else, that guy by all accounts is a hard ass who really gets on his players, and I'm this team kind of feels like it needs that energy right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't need your wacky friend who yells at fans
Yeah.
They need an adult. Someone, I don't know, someone was psychoanalyzing it, and they're just like, it's got to be so annoying for Jalen Hurts, who, like, you know, was coached under Lincoln Riley and, like, Nick Saban, two of, like, the most, like, sort of adult professional coaches in college
Yeah.
football, done, to go to Nick Sirianni. And I'm like, I don't know, that feels like it's psychoanalyzing. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, the sort of, like, meme wacky shit is
Yeah.
fun when you're winning. It's the same problem as Mike McDaniel. It's like, this becomes infinitely less charming when you're losing games
Oh yeah,
in a lot of
absolutely.
games very fast. Like when you blow a game division lead and then have to go to Kansas City in sub freezing temperatures and lose, or when you lose like 5 out of 6 and then just get completely lambasted by Tampa Bay, like, suddenly the charm drains real quick.
Yeah, no. Like I'm the leash is shorter, and I'm hopeful they won't do anything stupid. I don't need them to completely rearrange the wheel.
Mhm.
I don't need them to like to even develop the world's best strategy to win. I just need them to not do anything stupid. And it's like, and honestly, keeping their current coordinators, you better be. I would say, best case scenario is give them glowing recommendations for these other jobs because they're getting offers like
Mhm.
for interviews and stuff. It's just like just be like, you know what, you can take this, and just have a very peaceful exit of them where you don't have to deal with them outside of them being on the opposite side of the field.
Mhm. Um, shall we move on to our question of the week?
Yes, I felt like this was a fun one.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, I really like this one.
yeah. So, out of the eliminated teams, so there can't be any jinxing because they're already out. Who,
Mhm.
which would make the best Super Bowl?
Mhm.
So there's
Okay.
obviously three teams on each side. So in one of each, like same regular rules.
Mhm.
Um, I think a fun one would be Pittsburgh versus Philly.
It's got to happen someday, right?
There is like with the ability with how schedules work and stuff. There's technically a non-zero chance for it to happen. And I,
Yeah,
I
that'd be
kind of
interesting.
I feel like it would be fun to have in your lifetime. And you know what? Just screw it. Just have the game. Build a new stadium in freaking Harrisburg and have the game played in the middle of the state. And watch the state go to war. Like,
I was gonna say, well, I was gonna say, what was the New York version of that? I'm like, oh, that did happen. The Bills put the Giants in a Super Bowl.
yeah, like that would be like think about how much fun that would be.
Mm.
And that's all. Yeah, that was my pick for it.
Yeah, mine has got to be Miami, LA. Like, especially because like if Miami could just make it to the Super Bowl, they'd be fine because it's always in a warm weather place, and then it would just be like explosive offense versus old man offense, and it would be like a 50-50 shootout, and it would be a riot.
Yeah. Mhm.
For me, that one's an easy one.
Yeah.
Because like Cleveland, Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
I like again. The ceiling of Philly's exciting. The ceiling of Dallas is exciting. But like, if they couldn't do it this week, they're not.
They're not going to do it a different week. Um,
Right.
I would also though the third like combination of teams that we didn't mention, Cleveland versus Dallas would be a defensive battle for ages.
That actually would be pretty chaotic. Yeah, that would be. See, that would be like someone tried to sell me on that Patriots Rams Super Bowl as like I love a good defensive scrape, and I'm like, yeah, but it's not fun. It's just incomplete passes and an occasional sack. Like this would be like 3 interceptions returned for touchdowns, a sack fumble, two
Yeah.
safeties, a blocked punt where the punter looks like he died. Like this would be like a fun defensive battle
Yeah.
because it would just be chaos.
Yeah. Both quarterbacks are inconsistent enough to make the defenses like really shine.
Mm.
All right.
Um,
And
so
then
on to next week.
yeah. Oh yeah. Also, possibility of Jason Kelsey, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham retiring sucks. Hate that.
Oh yeah, we didn't
Really
talk about
depressing.
that.
That's it.
Once they have their official
Yeah.
speeches, we'll
Once,
definitely have our full eulogy.
yes, and I'll cry big time. Anyway, next week, first round buys, welcome back. I feel
Yes,
like they have been thrown both softball games and very difficult games.
right. These ones could sneak up on them. I know Houston and Baltimore have already played once, but that was before we really saw
When
we
did they?
really fully saw what Houston could be capable of.
Yeah, when did they play?
I
They
think it was literally
they
week
play
one.
week one. Yeah, they play week one when everyone was fresh, and C.J. Stroud didn't he threw all right. Um,
Yeah,
and
I remember us being like, he was running for his life, but he looked pretty good.
that was like the first game where he looked like that offensive line looked like they were folding in on him so much. I think that was in the notes too, where I mentioned that. Yeah, I mentioned that the offensive line looked like they were folding in on our baby boy, and now they've clearly gotten their shit together.
Oh yeah, I'm very curious to see how this even without their full repertoire of weapons. I'm curious to see how Houston does in this game.
Yeah, it's it's a little upsetting that they don't have their full repertoire, but
Mm.
it'll be good to see because even though they don't have it, they're still playing like champs with C.J. Stroud behind the wheel.
Right. Um, it is interesting. I put that as my biggest upset potential,
Yep,
whereas you put the other first round bye
yep.
team,
I
Green
also
Bay at San
I
Francisco.
also clocked that too. Honestly, Green Bay is riding this wild card high, and if they Ravens and San Fran are the teams to beat. That's a fact.
Mhm.
Um, there's no magic behind it. There's no other justifications. They're the teams to beat. And you know what? Put the lowest seed against them. Just really just embrace like this what can happen. And they're both the Sunday night or Saturday night games too.
Yes, and I'm always just I'll always say I'm always suspicious of the bye week, just because I'm like it's really hard to take on a team that's at full speed and
Mhm.
desperate compared to you.
Yeah. And it's it's like I said, Texans the Texans and Packers going into these divisional games, they knew. Oh, Texans less so, but the Packers, it's like you have like you're gonna either possibly face the number one team or nothing else if the Packers win. Texans, they had a couple more options. They had a couple there was potential for an upset, like a lower seed upset, but they still had the most likely chance of playing the Ravens.
Mm.
And then it's just like, all right, we know who to prep for, and they're both very top tier teams, and I'm excited to see these games. I'm hoping they're at least not slaughters.
Yes.
Both
Oh
yeah,
yeah. We
both
need more
teams,
competitive games this
yeah,
playoffs, for the love of God.
yeah, both teams have um, clearly exceeded all the expectations already. Let's ride this high.
Oh yeah. Our other games, while we're talking schedule, we have um, Tampa Bay at Detroit, another round of Kansas City and Buffalo, and oh yeah, that's all of them. Right, there's only
Yeah,
4 games now.
only games. Yeah,
Um, oh yeah, we literally have all of them listed.
yeah,
Our tit for tat games, you have Kansas City at Buffalo.
yep,
All I'll say is, it's just you can't. You always gotta. It's a superhero thing. You always gotta fight your demons at the end. It's always gotta be a
yeah,
metaphor for your conflict. And of course, we were never gonna get through this without beating them.
yeah. No, if you're playing in the AFC, assume you got to go in assuming you're going to have to play the Chiefs at some point. Just like just like the NFC where it's like if you're trying to win the NFC, assume you're going to have to play the 49ers at some point.
Mhm.
Um and laugh at the Eagles and Dallas Cowboys really fucking it up too.
Right. Um,
But
yeah, I don't know. This is the first time I really have no feeling about this game whatsoever. And I'm like, we just got to get out of the second round,
I
man.
yeah.
We can't lose in the divisional round again.
Yeah, there's only two teams that I do not want to see past this, and it's the 49ers and Chiefs. Chiefs, they've won a bunch already. They won last year, and they haven't been looking amazing this year. And with the storyline and how good some of these other teams have been, I'm not about like I don't I'm not looking forward to seeing the Chiefs play. Like but like you got the Texans with their young gunslinger, you got the Ravens looking amazing. The Buccaneers got there by dumb luck. The Detroit Lions are on a damn good push. Packers are riding the wild card undercard train,
Hell yeah.
and Bills never won. So it's like I feel like there's so much excitement that could be had with the exception of these few teams. Like with these few teams that are still in. And 49ers and Kansas City don't really make it as fun.
I mean, you're not wrong. I really do want to see. It's tough because, like, I don't know. After the good vibes we've had with Lamar Jackson this year, I really don't want to see him lose his first game.
I don't want to see him lose it, but I do want to see CJ Stroud win. That's the caveat.
Right?
Is
It's actually brutal.
it's
Um,
literally just us. It's you betting against yourself, really.
yeah, yeah. And meanwhile, my tit for tat game is Tampa versus Detroit because again, like Detroit's defense is still going to hold them back a little bit, and I just fully bought into whatever energy this Tampa Bay team has. Like
They have
again,
frat boy energy.
right? Exactly. I wish I could source this tweet better, but allegedly, the one of the players for Tampa Bay tweeted, "You're telling me I get to have another 3-hour goon session with the boys," and I'm 90% sure this is fake. The man's tweets are protected, so I can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I'm like, if
It's a
he,
frat.
yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, so these guys are fucking crazy. So, like, oh, okay, so this is what we're working
Okay.
with. They're gonna win the Super Bowl. They're gonna go to the Super Bowl. So I think this could actually be a really fun game.
Yeah. If
Because it's like the feel good story versus the feel bad story,
yeah,
but in a fun way.
like part of me would feel better about the Eagles losing to them if they make it further because I knew the Eagles weren't going to win. Like they wouldn't have won against Detroit, especially with how
Mhm.
they've been playing. And if it's just like, all right, the guy like it's that like thing of like, if these guys were planned to win the entire time, somebody's got to lose to them first, kind of
Right.
mentality. And it's
I
just
get
like
you.
at least we lost to the winners and not to some other guys. But oh man, if they play, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers get into the Super Bowl, I need like the most frat boy band to play at the what's it called play the Super Bowl halftime show, and it has to be like Real Big Fish or the Dave Matthews Band or something. It can't be
Right.
someone. It can't be
It
someone
can't
like
be.
legitimately popular. It's got to be like a
Yeah, they're gonna have to change it because it's Usher right now, and I'm like, that is not the energy for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
no.
Come on.
You need some form of like Queen mixed with Metallica to play that.
You need some 41. It's good. Oh
Sum
God.
41 is a great option. Outcast, and you just have to.
Yeah.
And you know what? Just get a freaking college marching band too.
Boy, they.
Have
Um,
that be the main event, and it would be. That's one of those things that it's like it's fun to. It'll never happen, but fun to imagine.
I agree.
Because they're gonna want to put in some big name talent and stuff, and it's just like, nah, give Baker Mayfield some real like silly talent to like jam out to and catch them having a mini mosh pit in the locker room at halftime too. This just in, like, Schefter reporting in, um, Baker Mayfield has a black eye going into the second half. Sources state that it was not from the game, but he was doing a keg stand and fell down, and he landed badly.
Jesus Christ.
That's
Um,
that's the energy I want.
shall we wrap up for the night?
We shall.
All right. Thank y'all for listening as we march through the playoffs. We so appreciate y'all joining us here. We're having fun talking about these wacky teams, and we hope that I don't become depressed next week. But until then, enjoy the second round of the playoffs, and let's have some football.